Okay, thank you very much for coming today. Welcome to those people who've travelled long distances. A number of people here from Italy, which is fantastic. Visitors to Renesi today. A number of people have travelled across London and found that very difficult as well today. So, but you're very welcome. We've got a really packed agenda. But before we get on to that, I just want to thank Renesi for hosting the event today and for empowering communities for providing the refreshments. Hosting that after we've done our presentations and the learning bit of the learning and networking has happened. The networking is really important. We get an opportunity to share and learn activities and the things we do, and hopefully we take something away. And if we talk about the learning, we have a number of things on the agenda today. So we're going to hear from John from Renesi. We're also going to hear about from Hannah from Gingerbread. And we're also going to hear from John around the Work and Health Programme around Shore Trust. So quite a packed agenda we've got to get in now in about half an hour's less time. But it doesn't matter, we'll rattle through it and we'll make sure that, that we get you home on time. Very lastly, this is what the IEP is about. It's getting people in a space, talking to people, sharing ideas, enabling people to learn. It's really important to the IEP that that's what we do. Getting the opportunity to learn and then getting the opportunity to share your experiences. So without further ado, as it were, I'm going to hand over to John, who's going to give you an introduction from Renesi.
Hello everybody and welcome to Renesi. I'm John Hitchin, Chief Exec here. For those of you that don't know us, we are a social enterprise that's been going for 20 years, and we're a social enterprise that's interested in what makes good places. The way in which we've gone about dealing with that question has changed somewhat over those 20 years. But fundamentally, that's what we're about. Right now, we do it in two ways. And what tends to happen is people know us for one of those ways or the other. So many of you people in this room, if you do know Renesi, you'll know us because we support people across London into work, whether they be refugees, people with long-term barriers to employment, and myriad other programs that we work on, which Laura and Alice are going to tell you a little bit more about in a second. That's how you'll know Renesi. But we also have a consultancy team that works with charities, not-for-profits, local government, national government, funders on questions of change, impact, quality, improvement, and how to run their organisations better and how to understand and learn about what they're doing. And for us, what's most important is if we're about place and we do some activities to think through that question of what it takes to improve places, what makes good places, then we have to be delivering those two strands of work which people know us for in a way which means we're learning from them, that the one is informing the other, and that those two things, when brought together, allow us a different kind and different quality of insight about place. So the reason I'm telling you this is you might know us for one thing, but we're about a few things. But what is fundamental and integral to our business model is learning. It doesn't really work if we don't do that well and do that right. I'm delighted that one of the organisations that we work with on questions of learning, Gingerbread, is here, and Hannah's going to be talking a little bit about their work. But I'm also delighted that my colleagues Laura and Alice are going to tell you a little bit about one of our largest, most significant in terms of scale programmes, in terms of the number of boroughs that we work in, and also in terms of our role, where we have really baked in learning to a programme that's about frontline delivery, working with refugees, but also thinking quite hard and systematically about how we learn from that and what we do with that learning. So I had 20 minutes on the agenda, but in the interest of our our delayed start, that'll do for me. Because what's more interesting actually is you hearing from Alice and Laura talking about our RISE programme, about how we work with refugees, what that means and what we're learning from it. And I think that would be much more interesting to all of you than hearing me talk for another 10 minutes.
Hello, my name's Laura Busfield. I'm the Services Director at Renesi. I'm going to talk to you a bit today about some of the learnings from the actual operational delivery of one of our programmes called RISE, and Alice will be talking you through some of the learnings from our evaluation as well. So for those of you that don't know, RISE stands for Refugees in Sustainable Employment. It's a contract on behalf of the Big Lottery and the European Social Fund as part of their Building Better Opportunities programmes. And it's specifically designed to support refugees across 10 boroughs in North and East London. As John mentioned before, in terms of significance, this is our first one as a prime contract holder. It's our first contract working across such a big geography. Our first time managing a supply chain, and also first time working exclusively with refugees. So just to give a bit of context, we've registered 561 refugees onto the programme, supported 122 to find employment, and as it stands right now, we've helped 52 refugees to remain in employment at 6 months or more, and we're still counting that. Just to also mention that what I like about this programme is that we're encouraged to measure other soft outcomes that you aren't necessarily able to do on other programmes, and I think in a world where payment by results and the success of a programme is judged on the maybe 40 to 50% of people that you get into work, I think it's really important that the big lottery are recognising other really great achievements that you achieve for those people that don't go into employment. So in terms of our programme design, one of the biggest challenges and changes that we've made has been to our training offer. We came in with a model of training based on ESOL, social wellbeing activities, basic IT, and we've had to constantly adapt and evolve that. One of the real challenges, as I'm sure you can appreciate, is attendance rates. Anyone that's ever delivered this type of programme. We expected a dropout in terms of attendance rates, but we've probably been experiencing consistently around 50 to 60% dropout rate. So we really started to ask the question, well, why is that? Is it that what we're putting on, is it relevant? Are we not selling it properly? Are we not reminding people? And actually, after feedback from the advisors and some of the refugees themselves, a lot of it was around this, and it was people coming with a mentality that they just want to find a job, particularly if you don't have recourse to public funds, you don't have a way of supporting yourself or your family, you don't necessarily want to sit down and have a conversation about what your barriers are and how we can address them, or how a confidence building course can help you find work. Actually, they're just wanting to go into work, especially with the young men that we're coming across as well. And actually, this has led to another challenge, which is people going into low-paid, low-skilled jobs when they're actually really highly qualified. This has been another issue. So, as you would expect as well, we've had a number of people come to us that have been through traumatic experiences, suffering from anxiety and depression. But actually, just broaching the subject with some cultures around well-being, people don't often understand what the term is. So I think caseworkers have found it really, really difficult to try and sell the benefits of addressing issues of well-being and how that can help you in the future find sustainable employment. And that's actually led to some of the lowest attendance on our courses. We've tried arts and crafts, we've tried yoga, we've tried absolutely everything. And still we have a problem with trying to engage people onto well-being programs. And also there's a issue of homelessness. Again, we knew it would be an issue, but I think we grossly underestimated the scale of the issue. Around about 40% of participants we've engaged with declare themselves as homeless, and another 20% of those are living in hostels. So it stands to reason that if you are not in stable housing, then actually attending a course to learn new skills is probably quite low down on your priority list. So they've all contributed to the attendance rates on our training. So we've made a number of different changes. Just wanted to talk you through a few, and this was one that just seems so obvious and so simple. We've incorporated employability elements into every course, but that hasn't really involved changing the course content too much. Actually, just by adding 2 words, for work, at the end of a title of a programme has had real significant impact. So now you might expect to attend confidence building for work, or basic IT for work, and actually that's really increased the attendance on our programmes because people can see how that can support them find work. An example of what's worked really well is once a quarter through Volunteering Matters, we have Deloitte deliver one-to-one employability days with our refugees. They're paired one-to-one. They go through things like CV writing, interview techniques, applying for jobs, all things that we do ourselves at Renacy, and yet every time we're putting on these courses, you get 15 to 20 people attending. Feedback's always been really positive, and again, we started asking, well, what is it about these Deloitte days that they're so more appealing than some of the stuff that we're doing? And actually, what it boiled down to, I originally thought maybe it was the Deloitte brand. People thought they were going to get a job at Deloitte, but actually, when you speak to people, the refugees don't necessarily know who Deloitte are. And what it boiled down to really was it was run by an employer. And I think that begs the question for us is how can we more meaningfully engage employers into the main delivery of programs and not just as an end result, as an end product. So you would expect that language would be a barrier to employment when delivering a program to refugees, which it definitely has been. We originally partnered with Redbridge Institute to deliver ESOL training, classroom-based ESOL training based on a scheme of work. And actually the formal approach didn't work, and it came down to this again, low attendance. So when we started to look at that and started to get feedback from the tutors, a lot of the feedback was around this, and it's the different variations of language spoken in one room made it very, very difficult to teach. It made it very difficult for those at the lower end to get the one-to-one support that they needed. We have many people that are kind of level 2, but then we have many people that aren't able to read and write in their own language, which makes learning English even harder. So we've made a number of different changes to our ESOL provision as well. We've taken a less formal approach, and we're not trying to replace formal ESOL at all. We'll happily signpost people to that. But actually we've moved on to more conversation clubs, more informal conversation clubs that are delivered across the 10 boroughs. And what we do is we ask participants to choose the content of those conversation clubs. They've been really well attended so far. Some of the topics chosen are how to access services such as healthcare, GPs. Passing the Life in the UK test has been a really popular one. And we've moved to a more one-to-one tailored ESOL support. So we now have, I think, around 5 or 6 ESOL tutors that work across the 10 boroughs that provide the much needed one-to-one ESOL support. And again, it's not necessarily teaching them about how to say the cat's out on the mat. It's about teaching people things that are relevant to them in their life right now. So helping them fill out forms, helping them to access services, etc., etc. And all of this, and it seems very, very obvious, but all of this is really about listening to the needs of the caseload and making sure that you're flexible and adaptable, and you can respond quite quickly to the changing needs of the caseload. And I think we've always done that, but probably not as quickly as we have done on this programme. And the change in the kind of engagement levels and the outcomes and the impact of that has been quite significant. So as I mentioned before, this is our first time managing a supply chain, working with really, really small organisations in partnership to deliver one common goal. And there's been a number of opportunities from that. It's been a really good learning experience for us. Co-location has been one of the biggest ones. We only have an office in Hackney. Well, we've got two in Hackney, one in Haggerston, one here. We can't physically deliver in the local areas without premises. So just being able to deliver a good quality service in partnership with a number of organisations in the local area has massively boosted the attendance rates in particular areas. It's also helped the working relationship between the Renacey employee and our partners as well, so we can have a much more open dialogue. We're addressing issues there and then on the spot in partnership with each other. And as well as our formal partners, we have 9 partners, mixture of referral, delivery and strategic partners. We've engaged with a number of different non-formal partners. So our partnerships manager, Emma, I don't think she's here, but her role is to look at what we're providing, look at the needs of the caseload and go out and find other organisations that could add value to the service. One really good example of that has been the YMCAs. So we started in YMCA Walthamstow. They had a number of refugees within their properties. So they would refer refugees to us, but also we would cross-refer into them for refugees that needed supported housing. Off the back of that, we're now working out of 4 YMCAs across the 10 boroughs as well, so that's been really positive. And finally, capacity building. It's been really great to be able to work with smaller organisations to give them an insight into this type of employability programme, give them the opportunity to engage in this type of employability programme, provide them with more skills and knowledge, particularly around ESF. But also, on the flip side, we've learnt a lot from these organisations, these really specialist local organisations. One example is Anne Thomas from Mind, has spent the best part of 18 months upskilling our advisors on mental health first aid, on trauma, on PTSD, on providing one-to-one support to our advisors and participants around overcoming some of those barriers. And just, hang on, bear with. There's been some challenges also of working in partnership, and I'm sure anyone who's delivering BVO now is going to appreciate my next point. As I say, we work with really small organisations, and I don't think anyone really understood at the start of Building Better Opportunities the complexity of the claims process. And if you're a small organisation that's never dealt with ESF before, and then suddenly you're having to evidence every penny that you spend, quite often some of the funding that they receive is disproportionate to the amount of time they have to put in to submit these claims, and that's been a real challenge for us, and we've tried to support where we can, but it has been an ongoing challenge. Thanks, Scott. And that goes down to resources as well. So I absolutely believe that we need to engage these local organisations, particularly when we're talking about referral partners. They're the ones that know their area the best, they have the reach within the communities. But actually, particularly when dealing with refugees, it takes a long time to build up trust. So if you've got a team of 4 people, one goes on long-term sick and one's on annual leave, actually there can be quite a long period of a gap in the service, and it takes a lot of time to build up that momentum, which can lead to performance issues as well. So just when we talk about Renace's strategy and what does it take to improve a place, what I'm really interested in at the moment is not necessarily what we can do as an organisation to do direct delivery. I think we've been doing that for a long time. We know what we're doing, we're still learning. But actually it's how can we support other organisations in the areas that we're working with to also be able to improve their services for refugees as well. And that's it from me. I'm going to hand over to Alice.
My name's Alice. I work in Renace's consultancy team. And my role in this project is to effectively act as an internal consultant supporting with the evaluation of RISE, which has been a really good opportunity for us to apply some of the skills and knowledge we have in our consultancy team actually in-house on a programme that Renace is delivering. So it's been a really interesting experience for both teams, I think, to kind of learn from each other. As you can imagine, for a programme of this nature and scale, we collect an awful lot of data, and the evaluation's been quite wide-ranging in terms of content. But for today, I've selected just a couple of hopefully interesting pieces of data to share with you on 3 questions. So the first one is to give you a bit of a flavour of who these people are who are engaging with this programme. Who are these 561 people that we've engaged so far? I'd also like to share with you a bit of information about the types of jobs that we've supported people into. And very briefly at the end, I want to talk a little bit about some of the other outcomes we've achieved, because as Laura mentioned earlier, it's not just about the jobs, it's also about the other ways in which we support people and the other outcomes we can help them to achieve in their lives. So to start with, who have we engaged? Of the 561 participants, just over half are men. We've got 40% women, and the other percentage of people who didn't want to answer the question or who we don't have data for. But definitely slightly more men on the programme than women at the current time. That's actually improved as the programme has matured. At the early stages, it was more like 70% men, 30% women, but the gap has been narrowing. Looking at the ages of those people, so this graph, we've got younger ages at the top down to older ages at the bottom, for those of you who can't see the numbers. And the men are in purple and the women are in green. And what we found quite interesting with this cohort is actually men tend to be skewed towards younger ages. So we have a higher number of young men, particularly in their 20s or kind of mid-20s, engaging in the programme, whereas women are much more evenly spread across different decades. And on average, women are about 10 years older than the men on the programme, so the average age is about 35. That explains some of the diversity of the programme and also some of the challenges that Laura was talking about earlier. Our participants on the programme also come from a big range of different countries across the world. The highest number of participants from any one country come from Eritrea, so we've currently got 85 people come from Eritrea, which you may not be able to see on the map, but it's the small, intense orange colour just above Somalia in the kind of north and east of Africa there. We've also got a really high number from Sudan, from Somalia, Ethiopia, Iran, Afghanistan, and other areas of kind of southern and central Africa as well. In terms of the boroughs where people live, as Laura mentioned, we deliver across 10 boroughs in North and East London, and you can see those in purple here. But we also cater for people if they live in a different borough but they still want to engage in this programme, that is allowed. So we also have a number of people who are actually living in different boroughs but come to us for support anyway. As you can see, there's quite a wide spread in the number of people we've got from different boroughs. So at the top end, Haringey, we've got over 100 people currently living in Haringey. And at the other end, Enfield, we've only got 13. And I think there's a couple of reasons for that spread. One of the primary reasons is that this is really a reflection of the areas where we've got local partners who are really engaged and really have those networks of refugees and are able to refer them to us. So Laura mentioned the YMCA, for example, and they are the source, if you like, of the majority of people from Haringey and from Waltham Forest, because there's a YMCA in both of those boroughs. So that partly explains this kind of wide range in numbers. Laura mentioned as well some of the challenges we've had with ESOL, and I think this graph really illustrates that. So across the bottom, going from left to right, we have people with lower English levels, so pre-entry on the far left, right through to fluent on the far right. And again, we've got men in purple and women in green. And you can see just how diverse the spread of English levels is across this cohort. Also interesting the fact that we have a much higher proportion of women who are fluent than we do of men. And we think that might be a reflection of the fact we tend to be attracting younger men who've been in the country for a shorter period of time, compared to women who've maybe been in the UK for a longer period of time and are only now kind of thinking about how to, what their route into employment might be. And again, as Laura mentioned, homelessness has been a massive issue, even bigger than we'd expected when we launched the programme. So we've got about 40% of people are homeless, a further 20% living in hostels, and then just under a fifth who are supported in council accommodation, and then a further roughly 20% who are either living with friends and family or living in private rented accommodation. And again, that's created a whole host of challenges for us as an organisation in kind of delivering this programme well. But I guess the more important question is really, who have we not engaged? So how we've used some of this data is to help us really refine our outreach, our approach to outreach, where we do it, who we're doing it with, and trying to make sure that we're not missing people who might really benefit. In terms of the countries that are underrepresented, we have a really good representation from Southern and Sub-Saharan Africa and Eastern Africa, as you saw from the map. But there's no kind of concrete data on how many refugees there are in London from different countries or where they live, but we suspect that we are underrepresented in people from Southern Asia, so Pakistan, India, Sri Lanka. Those are countries that historically have had quite a high proportion of refugees coming to the UK, but we haven't seen that high proportion on this programme so far, and we're now starting to work out how we can actually improve our engagement with some of those communities. And the final question is, are women underrepresented on the programme? So we do have a target of 50-50 men and women, but actually when you look at data on refugees in the UK, about 70% of refugees are men and about 30% are women nationally. So actually our kind of 60-40 split at the minute is actually over-representing women compared to the refugee proportion of refugees in the UK at the moment. So moving on to my second question about what types of jobs people are achieving. As Laura mentioned, we've got 121 people in jobs at the moment. 61% of those people are men and 39% are women. So at the current time, we're slightly more successful in placing men than we are with women. And those people are going into a range of different contracts. As you can see, the majority of people have gone into a full-time contract, but they're far more likely to be men than women. Roughly equal proportion of people have gone into part-time, and still quite a high number. A couple of people gone into 0-hour contracts, and at the moment they're more likely to be women than men. And also supported 4 people into self-employment, and all of those 4 people currently are men. So we're keeping an eye on this to kind of understand the more about the type of jobs that we're supporting people into. And these are the top 6 sectors of the jobs that people have gone into so far. It's actually been quite a diverse range, but these are the 6 that have really stood out. So we've got catering and hospitality, warehouse distribution type jobs, customer service, admin, social care and cleaning. And when we compare this to our other employment programs that are not refugee specific, actually it's very, very similar types of jobs and sectors. So what we found is that the type of jobs that we're supporting refugees into are not hugely different from the type of jobs that we're supporting people from other employment programs into. And of course, there's quite a lot of challenges with this. So one area that we don't collect data on at the minute is the pay of people of the first job that they take after engaging with this program. So we don't know for certain the types of pay scales that people are on, but looking at the types of jobs, I think it's reasonable to assume that many people will be in lower than average paid jobs. Anecdotally, again, we don't have systematic data on this, but we know that some people are going into jobs for which they're overqualified. There's all sorts of reasons for that, and it's a real issue kind of working with refugees as to how to support them to take jobs that are more aligned with the skills they have from their home country. But as Laura mentioned, a lot of people are just really desperate to get a job, any job, as quickly as possible, and I think that's one of the reasons for that. But again, as I mentioned, the types of jobs people are going into are comparable with our other programs. And then finally, I just want to briefly mention and pick up on a point Laura made about, it's not just about the jobs, it's also about the other outcomes that we support people into. And here's just a few examples of some of those outcomes. This is after just 3 months. So we're really pleased with these figures, showing just how many people have, for example, improved their well-being and resilience, increased their support networks through being on the programme, and increased their skills and knowledge in relation to employment. We do continue to ask that question after 3 months as well, and we've tended to see it does improve consistently over time. So we're really pleased about that, particularly improving the well-being of people who might not be able to get into a job within the timescales of this programme, but for them that's actually a really important outcome of their engagement with us. So I'm going to leave it there. If you've got any questions about the data or anything else about the programme, then do get in touch. We're really happy to share more learning on what we found out through this programme, and thank you for coming today.
Hi everybody, thank you very much for having me along today. My name's Hannah and I'm the Head of Learning and Evaluation at Gingerbread. The presentation that I'm going to provide today is probably in direct contrast to the kind of previous presentation, which both shares some of the kind of highlights and some of the challenges and provides some data on our employment programme. I've been in post for 12 months, and my kind of brief when I came in to work with the CEO was to help Gingerbread think about where it best delivers impacts for single parents. And within that, we've had to go on a journey to think about our work supporting single parents into work. And really, I'm going to tell you a little bit about that process today, about that journey and our learning, and some of the conclusions we're beginning to draw about that and what that means for us in our future. I should say that we've been around for 100 years as an organisation, so we've evolved in that time. There are some people in this room that have been connected with Gingerbread for a good deal longer than I have, so I can talk very clearly about the last year, but for kind of context beyond that, please do come and chat to friends and colleagues. We would like to think that we're the leading charity kind of across England and Wales for single parents, and we provide a variety of services. So before we talk about what we do, I think it's really important for me to begin the context with kind of why single parents and work before I kind of dive into kind of what we deliver. So we published a report called 1 in 4 earlier this year. So 1 in 4 families in the UK are now headed by a single parent. So no longer are we a sort of minority community. We're actually increasingly a mainstream family, diverse family unit. And contrary to what the media would have you believe, 68% of single parents are in employment. But the problems or the restrictions that they face mean they're often stuck into low-paid and insecure employment rather than sustainable work that supports them and their families to flourish for the future and achieve the same that you would want for a two-parent family. What is particularly interesting about our 1 in 4 research is the 0 hours contract has seen that single parents particularly are using these more because it's perhaps more flexible, but that also opens them up to more risks within that. And the kind of idea about sustainable work and providing a future for their family becomes really important within that. And there is a significantly higher rate of, a reported higher rate of problems in mental well-being for single parents rather than two-parent families. And what's more worrying than this is that children of single-parent families are sort of more likely to grow up in poverty. And so there's an impact not just on the kind of the head of the family for single parents, but the long-term kind of aspirations for their children. So as you can see, work and employment for single parents is an issue that they need some support with. So we had a new strategy last year, and really we were beginning to look across the organisation to think about how we kind of link our work via impact areas. And so our vision is making sure that we're kind of supporting a diverse family structure and they're not stigmatised. And our mission is to make sure that single-parent families live happy, fulfilling and secure lives. And we're going to do this in a various ways, which are sort of 4 strategy areas. So we want to provide single-parent stability at points of transition, particularly as they transition to becoming a single parent. That's a really vulnerable time for many parents. We want to not only support them to kind of achieve their basic needs, but we want to make sure that for them and their families that they can flourish, that they can access leisure, that they can access childcare, that they can get a job that they're supported in, and they can really achieve their dreams. And also that they're valued kind of by society and they're not stigmatised. So the stigma and loneliness that single parents face recurringly comes up to us as a barrier for them. And finally, we really need to make sure as an organisation we're financially fit for the future. I'm sure this is not an uncommon trend within the sector, but there are real challenges for us at the moment to secure our income for the next 5 years and to make sure we can stay and support single parents in the longer term. And so we've been on quite a journey thinking about, well, what does all this look like? How do we bring together the areas of our work into outcomes? And it's a work in progress, and I'm taking it to the board next week, so you guys have a sneak preview of what we're saying. But basically, we think we need to be focusing on financial well-being for single parents and how we equip them. We think it's about relational well-being, about how they connect and feel supported in their communities. It's about their emotional well-being and supporting them to feel able to tackle their challenges. And it's about supporting the structural and systems change that will allow them to reduce the kind of stigma that they face in the future. And of course, we would also like the dream ticket of being financially sustainable to achieve that. So what do we do currently is not necessarily what we've got on our strategy slides. So what we do currently to support single parents into work is we have 3 regional delivery teams. So we have a head office in London, up in Kentish Town, but we have 3 teams of practitioners who are largely delivering employment contracts in the North West, Wales and London in the South and West. We deliver a range of contracts, including building better opportunities for DWP. We also subcontract for other partners working with young parents. So we subcontract for Bernardo's, for example. We also have a corporate partnership with Marks and Spencer's, where we support 700 parents to access a work placement in their store. And we reach around sort of 2,000 parents in total through the kind of range of our employment programs. As a parent, you don't just have to come onto an employment program with us. You can also ring our helpline, which is free to access. And over 50% of the calls we're getting at the moment are around benefits claim and tax credits and income maximisation. So often relating to kind of their work status and what they're doing as they either move out or into work. And with universal credit kind of being rolled out, the complexities that come with that. And our policy work is really trying to kind of highlight the precariousness of kind of the situation single parents are facing. But as you can see from the 2 slides, the volume of single parents out there versus the volume of people we're supporting on our employment contracts is not necessarily, we're not necessarily making a significant indent on some of the kind of challenges we're facing around employment through our employment contracts. The challenges that we face here, universal credit is a huge issue for us, as I'm sure for many of you in the room who are working with more disadvantaged groups. So although it's only being kind of piloted and rolled out phase by phase, 1 in 4 claimant households are single parents. So single parents are significantly impacted by this financially. And this is creating a whole kind of, particularly around kind of managing debt and getting into kind of arrears on housing payments. We are really seeing this struggle, and this is making it very challenging to work with single parents to talk to them about kind of coming to do a work programme with us. They've got other more pressing needs. Rightly or wrongly, the sort of partnerships we have at the moment that support single parent into work are actually supporting people into short-term, low-paid and often insecure work. And the problem for that, for us, is that that may well trigger somebody transitioning to universal credit sooner than they would do earlier. So actually, through working with us, we might have supported them to build their skills and their confidence and get work experience. But if that job doesn't continue forever, we've actually potentially made them worse off by pushing them through a kind of universal credit claim. And that's a real moral dilemma for us as an organisation. We are finding that many parents are a considerable distance away from the workplace, and they need a lot of support to get there. And working on a sort of particularly kind of specified sort of length of programme can be really challenging because they don't necessarily fit that model. We really need to make sure they have the right support to kind of build confidence, access support, particularly around childcare, understand their future employment options, what that could be for them, and to think about their basic employment skills, how to write a CV, how to turn up for interviews, what that might look like. And the problem for us is that it's not us alone that looks at kind of how they get a job, unless we can find them a flexible childcare provider locally and an employer that's able to understand that if their child is sick or ill in school or in childcare and they need to go home because there's no one else to pick them up. We're often finding that single parents, whilst we might get them into work, can't sustain their work because the employers aren't set up to support them. And sadly, on our work programmes, we have, at best, a 30% into work rate for our employment programmes, which, if you're paid by kind of results, is obviously a challenge for us as well. So we kind of went back to the we sort of have done a lot of thinking, like we've looked at the evidence about our evaluation, but we've also talked to parents. We've done a really depth piece of research, which Renacey have also been involved in facilitating. We've done a really detailed study of parents who do and don't access our services. We've done an evidence review from the last 3 years worth of all the evidence that Gingerbread has, internally and externally, and we've also done some external reviewing. And what single parents tell us they value from Gingerbread is the work that we do to recognise and support the challenges they face and to provide and to make sure kind of we're fighting their corner with a sort of one organisation that can sort of shout out for single parents. We know through the range of work we provide, we do develop parents' networks and confidence. So some of that is through our employment programmes, but some of that is through our peer support groups, some of that is through our forum, some of that is through our website. And we know that our helpline and supported by our online advice is really valuable to provide specific information kind of that meets single parents' needs without kind of them getting referred around various agencies. So often they'll kind of call us with the first issue, which might be I need to do a kind of back to work calculation, but they might then go on to talk about childcare arrangements and family law, or they might go on to talk about housing. And so through our helpline we're able to kind of triage their needs, that they might not know those needs exist until they kind of come to us. What do parents want from Gingerbread? We were really surprised that parents really felt like they needed more emotional support to focus on the challenges they face. Now, of course, that could look at one option as providing a counselling service, but actually many parents said, what I value from Gingerbread is being connected with other parents, but your provision to connect to other single parents is really weak and patchy, and it doesn't meet for everyone. And so I can get that emotional support from people like me if you create opportunities to connect with us. They value our campaigning advocacy work because I think they recognise that in terms of creating kind of real longer term solutions, somebody has to be doing this on behalf of them. And they like our 85 support groups across the country, but they exist to do different things depending on who runs it, and they sometimes do run and they sometimes don't run, and they're not very accessible, and they're definitely not kind of uniform in what they do or what we know about them. They really want our kind of advice and information, and they value the fact that when they interact with Gingerbread, somebody can help think about kind of getting them on the right track. What do I need to do right now to address the fact that, you know, my house is on the market, my partner's left me, I haven't got a job, and my kids need to go into childcare. They value that. Perhaps what's important about that is nowhere on those 2 slides they tell us they want help getting a job. Even though we know that it's really important to get them to a job. And this has been quite a sort of interesting thing for us to consider, is what is Gingerbread's role? Are we the best people to support single parents into work? Of course, clearly we do at the moment, but should we continue to do it in the future? So what have we learnt? In the last year, I've picked up several evaluations, and I will admit, some of them are great. We're working with Renacy on one of them, but there are some real challenges in that learning. So we do a brilliant job with our direct delivery staff of building confidence, supporting on specific challenges, connecting them to peer networks because they train in other groups of single parents. Sadly, that's not what we're paid to deliver. We don't consistently create good work outcomes for those single parents we work with. So we're not strong at engaging employers, and we haven't necessarily got that pathway right. We definitely don't have the effective back office systems to do this well and at scale. And for many of you will know that those systems to process the claims and to kind of bring that money through is really, really challenging. And I don't necessarily think that we would necessarily have invested to the degree we needed to do as we took these contracts on to be able to do that effectively. And I think really honestly, if Gingerbread would like to play in the employment space, we need to work in partnership. We do really well at supporting people understand that they would like to get a job, they'd like support to move the job, but we're not necessarily getting them into jobs. So should it be us that deliver the whole journey, or do we deliver part of that journey? And we absolutely need to strengthen our outreach and engagement work. So we sort of assume that because we're Gingerbread, we've been around 100 years, that kind of single parents just kind of flock through the door and come to us and say, yes, come on my programme. And that's just not the case. And that partnership working would really help think about how we roll that up. So the challenge in the era of not having enough money to do everything is to think about what we do well and to really focus on delivering what only Gingerbread can deliver. And we've actually made a decision to kind of wind down our employment contract deliveries. And with that comes kind of closing our regional offices and teams. We will deliver out on our existing obligations, but we're no longer going to deliver in the way that we do it. We don't feel it's providing the right value for single parents. We believe we can support those contracts in other ways, but we don't necessarily need to be the prime contractor. We will focus on trying to understand what sustainable work looks like for single parents, trying to pilot models of that and working with employers to better think about what can we do together to help you think about how you can attract more single parents and sustain them in your work. We want to make sure we continue to work with policymakers and employers to kind of advocate on these issues. And we want to really make sure we're kind of piloting more in-work support programs. So not just getting people into work, but what does it take to sustain a job? What does it take for you to be promoted? What does it take you to kind of achieve your career aspirations? And we want to really collaborate to apply everything we know about the difficulties that single parents face getting into employment to work with other people who are doing that really, really well. We absolutely need to strengthen this idea of connected network of single parents, their families, the people who support them, and really kind of bring this kind of peer support opportunities to fruition. We do that well and we've invested in it. But that kind of increasing connection and that self-esteem and that confidence are precursors to moving through to employment. But we do that bit really well and no one else necessarily does. And we will absolutely continue to run our helpline and make sure we provide high quality information and advice specifically for single parents that links to their employment journeys but doesn't provide all the answers. So that's a very quick kind of gamble through sort of 12 months at Gingerbread. I will be around kind of later for questions. I'm sorry I can't talk to you about pretty charts and data. That's a challenge within the organisation. But we do want to make sure that I think we're talking to people about why we've made some of these decisions and the process we've been through as we kind of move through our sort of strategy as an organisation. Thank you.
I'm always conscious when you go last at these events that people just probably want to go and grab a glass of wine and start mingling and chatting. So I won't keep you for too long. I thought what would be useful to start though is just to spend 2 minutes talking a little bit about Sure Trust, because we have undergone probably the biggest period of change that we've had in our 30-year history over the last kind of 12 months. We've recently grown the organisation to become one of the top 20 largest charities in the UK. And we've done that firstly through some organic growth, but in the main through some acquisitions. So we now have the Sure Trust Group, which incorporates Sure Trust, as everybody hopefully knows, the Prospects Group, Ixion and Sure Education Trust, along with a whole range of other smaller organisations that we're now trying to bring together, and collaboration actually being the theme of my little slot today. We focus on 7 specific areas, all to do with supporting people to transform their lives in lots of different ways. So employability is one of our big areas, and we run kind of large-scale national contracts, so work and health programme, which I'll talk to you about in a little moment, new enterprise allowance, national career service, specialist employability support, and we're currently running down work programme and work choice across all of our CPAs as well. But we also have 6 other distinct areas, and they all have to work together for the benefit of the organisation, our beneficiaries, our partners and our commissioners. We have a justice division. We're the largest provider of HMPPS CFO3, fantastic title, largest provider of those contracts nationally. We have an education division, so in addition to Sure Education Trust, we also have Gabatas and Optimus, both organisations operating internationally around education consultancy for people at disadvantage. We have a learning and skills division, and we are now one of the largest providers of apprenticeship and traineeship and foundation learning programmes across England. Children and family services, so this is a new part of Sure Trust's operations. A lot of people don't know we actually run 26 children's homes across the UK and have fostering and adoption contracts across a number of local authorities. Health, we deliver a range of health and wellbeing contracts, including BBO in London, specifically for people with mental health issues. And finally, our social impact division, which covers everything from enterprise, our retail charity shops, of which there are around 100 dotted about the country, our accessibility services, and importantly, the work that we do internationally, because we have operations in no less now than 11 countries around the world and are working with the governments of those countries to support people at real disadvantage in all of the different operational strands that I've mentioned. So, our purpose as an organisation now, just recently relaunched our values and our purpose, but ultimately what we want to do is transform the lives of 1 million people a year. Pretty ambitious statement. And we'll do that here at home through running a number of different contracts for a number of different commissioners, but also on that international work that we're doing across. And I wanted to talk to you very quickly about a little piece of that work. So we are working in partnership with a social enterprise in India and an engineer who's actually designed a wheelchair that can be manufactured, really cheap unit cost, and manufactured by people sitting down. So we've employed a number of wheelchair users in the factory to produce these wheelchairs, which will then be given for free to other people who require wheelchairs. And that's one example of the international kind of social enterprise projects that we are currently doing. So work and health programme, very quickly, that's where we deliver. Central England, home counties, West London. And we really wanted to focus on 2 aspects of the programme. The first is around service integration, and the second is around localism. Now, service integration, the term is nothing new. And I remember running a customer focus group back in the days of New Deal. And I spoke to a customer who said that their biggest issue with our sector was that we don't talk to each other. And they had an appointment with their, what we now call work coaches, they would have been called something else back then at Job Centre Plus, an appointment with their housing officer, an appointment with their probation officer, all at the same time on the same day, and nobody would counsel or rearrange for them. So they were in a really difficult position. Do I go back to prison? Do I lose my house? Or do I have my benefits stopped? And when you hear that, you think, wouldn't it be great if somebody just picked up a phone or sent an email and said, I'm working with this person, can you reschedule or can I reschedule the appointment? But you know, in a lot of cases that didn't happen. So work and health programme is really designed with service integration in mind. And it says at the bottom there, holistic person-centred approach. That's not the approach of Sure Trust as a provider, That's now the approach of the Commissioner. And I think that little change is actually really important, because the Commissioner is now saying you have to work with housing associations, with healthcare providers, with specialist providers, in order to ensure that that participant gets the very best level of joined up service possible, and reduce the duplication of services as well. So very quickly touching on our delivery model, because this will provide some context for the collaboration piece. So we've created a number of work and wellbeing hubs. We have done this really to provide a space for the local communities to come and deliver their services for free, and for people to have a space to access lots of different things as well. So they're very bright, they're airy, they're not the kind of, you know, offices with training rooms and computer suites. We've got all of that there, but it's more like a coffee shop feel. And so there's always fresh fruit available for people. We have lots of different activities, everything from arts and crafts, sports, yoga, tai chi, a whole range. I think when we last looked at the Leicester hub, there were 46 different sessions running over the course of 1 week. So really it's all about giving customers choice. We know that the greater the choice, the greater level of engagement that we have from people. So we've also put in place health and wellbeing teams. These are specialists. We've got general practitioners, experts in skeletal, musculoskeletal, psychotherapists, physiotherapists, a whole range of different clinician experts. We also have a volunteer programme and currently have over 1,000 volunteers working across our contracts, and they donated 100,000 hours of their time last year to support our customers on a range of different things. And I wanted to talk a bit about time credits as well, because this really helped us with the whole service integration piece. So we are working in partnership with Tempo. For those of you that have not heard of Tempo, they used to be called Spice Innovations. No great surprise they decided to change their name. And Tempo are managing our time credits initiative. Time banking, of course, nothing new. It was around in the 80s. But this is slightly different. So for every hour that one of our customers volunteers to do something that helps their community, and that could be running a local reading group in the library, it could be a local walking group, whatever it is, they receive an hour's time credit back, and they can spend that in the local swimming pool for an hour's swimming, or the local gym for an hour's exercise, or they can save them up and take the kids down to London in the summer holidays and go to the Tower of London or Madame Tussauds or whatever. It's a really great way of building people's confidence and self-esteem, but also delivering that social impact as well on a local level. And on that, we've decided to change the way with Work and Health programme that we approach everything really. And to start with that, I'll talk a little bit about the way that we've approached our responsibilities as a prime contractor. For a long time now, and you know, every organisation is different, but certainly I've worked with a number of primes over the last 15 years, and some of them have a kind of command and control attitude towards contracting, and we wanted to get away from that and build more of a partnership. And also, critically, the expert organisations that we work with, that all of us work with day to day, for the benefit of our beneficiaries, customers, participants, service users, whatever we want to call the people that we're here to help. Those niche providers very often have cash flow issues, they're small, they may be third sector, they don't know where the money's coming in to pay the bills very often. And so we felt that the right thing to do was to commission those experts and pay them up front for a number of interventions. And if we don't use those interventions, that's our problem. We'll then gift them to our end-to-end supply chain partners or to other partners or Job Centre Plus. But ultimately, those small organisations, they're able to forecast more effectively, and we can then help them to capacity build as well, moving forward. When I was looking at putting a slide together that illustrated localism and working in partnership, I had a little look on our MI system to see how many organisations we're working with across the work and health, just the work and health programme areas that I showed you earlier. 1,246 separate organisations are invested with us in the work and health programme. Now, we don't contract a lot of those. We don't commission their services because they are already commissioned through other avenues. But actually, it's building those relationships at a local level. It's going out and meeting. I think I've met with about 50 MPs now across the different constituencies to talk about what their view of the world is. It's talking to combined authorities, local authorities, devolved deal areas, and really getting into the grassroots of what's happening locally. And when we were setting this up, we were looking for co-location and outreach opportunities, because we've got the work and wellbeing hubs, but we can't have them everywhere. And so we've got over 600 sites that we deliver services now that are co-location and outreach. Co-location, things like children's centres, community centres, health centres, so on and so forth. But our outreach, it could be the local library. It could be absolutely anywhere. And so I went to have a look at a potential co-location site in Birmingham, South Birmingham. And I found an organisation. I'm from Birmingham, I'm a Brummie. I didn't even know this organisation existed. And it's called Northfield Community Partnership. And within this little office on the high street of Northfield, tucked away in South Birmingham, next to a Kentucky Fried Chicken, if anyone's into that, they deliver so many different services to the local community. So they deliver housing services, financial support, support for people who are victims of domestic abuse. They're a food bank, they're a needle exchange. They've got so many services being run from this place that it just seemed right that we would co-locate with them rather than the other options that we had in that particular area. But I would never have known they existed had we not embarked on this kind of journey to try and find as many organisations that had, you know, synergy with our values and wanted to support people in their local community. And it's given us so many opportunities. There are challenges, of course, and we've heard a lot about challenges today, and I could list on 30 slides some of the challenges that we're facing. But actually, what for me is exciting is that with every challenge that we face, it somehow seems to be turning into a further opportunity or something that we hadn't considered before. So, for example, expanding caseworking with local authorities and NHS. We're now seeing more and more case conferencing happening. We're seeing, you know, 2, 3, 4, 5-way conversations through WebEx, through video link, or through good old-fashioned conference call between service providers for the benefit of an individual. We're talking about joint commissioning now with combined authorities, local authorities, with CCGs, with housing associations, and that real integration is starting to come to the fore, and now able to align the development of service delivery as well. So, talked about building capacity with organisations. We're really in a position now where we can springboard to, I think, the next level of trying to shape the way that governments procure services. And actually that's a really exciting piece of work that we'll be working on or continuing to work on next year. So I just wanted to give you a flavour really of our experiences on the Work and Health programme, particularly around service integration and localism, and our intent to work with as many organisations as possible in as many ways as possible to really change the way that public services are delivered. So thank you very much for your time. Please have a glass of wine, although Scott's probably got a few words to say before we can. And I'll be around for the next however long, so please come and say hello. Thanks very much.
Hello, my name is Paul Dunn. I work for Empowering Communities, which is a non-for-profit social enterprise. We operate in about 60% of the police force areas across the country, but we're quite unique actually, and I actually love working for this company. I'm not an IT person for a start. I couldn't tell you how to work my iPhone, but what we do, which is different, is we actually go as ex-champion practitioners, go out and find out what you need, and we design programs around your needs rather than what we can offer you, if that makes sense. Now we cover about sort of 50 odd businesses, but employability is one of the areas that we do cover. And we're working with Me and My Learning, which is up in Melton Mowbray, learning some really interesting sort of facts from them. People that come into this sort of world of employability, as you know, have about 5 different sort of triggers. They're known for homelessness, as we mentioned before. They're known for maybe domestic violence or something else, or an ex-offender, or just mental health safeguarding related issues. And the one thing that we do is we provide what we call a sort of an information sharing platform for agencies such as yourself to have a secure and encrypted way to share information with all your other partners. It's working really, really well. And I've just come from a meeting in Brent, actually, where we use this system for our community MARICs, which are a multi-agency risk assessment conference. And we had Job Centre Plus there, and we had public health there as well, talking about people who are high risk due to their vulnerability of being exploited or for any other reason as a repeat victim. So I kind of come from this from a different point of view. But what's interesting about this is that we're starting to realise, and I'm an ex-police officer, and you cannot actually operate without working in partnership. And we talk about partnership on a day-to-day basis. Partnership is very difficult at the moment because people are working with limited resources and doing an awful lot more. But actually, when you do get a contribution, when you do get that ownership and shared ownership of specific issues, people actually do come on board. They enjoy it. They get something out of it. So what we provide is about 3 quick things I'm going to talk about. One is an encrypted referral form. So if you've got a public-facing audience that you want to get out to and you want to get some information back, we've got rid of spreadsheets. We don't use them anymore. We save about 1 hour per person. And in Tower Hamlets alone, we've got about 7,000 people on one of the spreadsheets. So imagine the savings there. We also have a triage desk. So say, for example, you want people to refer into your particular course or program, etc., then they would fill that out with your help, and then it would automatically populate into a triage desk. So there'd be no sort of extra work done by any workers. It would do it for you, and it would be able to pull off all sorts of different reports, ages, types of employment, mental health issues, whatever it is. And it allows you at that stage to start referring to other agencies. But what we've also got is this case management system, and it's now, as I said, it's been used by county lines in London for the orchestrated criminal gangs operating outside of London, but also British Transport, Police Transport for London, and it's a national system. So everybody that's on that system has one profile. So if you have an individual that's coming through your door that maybe is for unemployment issues or something like that, but is also known by a multitude of other organisations, rather than having everybody having their own separate profile for that individual, you actually create one for one. So everybody contributes to that particular individual if it's suitable to do so, if it's appropriate to do so. And it's called a lockdown system, so you can't accidentally share information with anybody. You have to give access to those individuals that are able to use the system. There's no licenses, so you can have 50,000 people on the system. It's now being used by GPs up in Brent as a means of identifying where we need that extra support, that holistic support around people. But we've also got something else that's just come online. And as I said, we're a non-for-profit organisation. We don't do it for money. We do it because we're all from your backgrounds. We all want to help people improve the quality of information sharing and partnership working. And we just created this thing called My Portal, which is really interesting. And what that is if, say, for example, you have a confidential client that you want to talk to on a regular basis, then you can share information with the relevant organisations across the system, but you give them their own portal. And this is really important for things like modern day slavery and things like that, where they have a confidential portal. They can communicate confidentially with you. You can task them, they can task you, and it's all done through a one process, which is encrypted from start to finish. And it means that anything they say, anything they write, anything they want to put to you is between you and them. So it's really good for things like victims of domestic abuse, where they don't want other people seeing their emails, etc. And we've just created that. And it's something of real interest to think people like integrated offender management, where you're trying to put them onto programs and you want to get them to go to these interviews, etc. You want to communicate with them, and the system will do that for you. And we've received some real sort of interest. My boss at the moment is actually in Australia because he's set up an office over there, and we're inundated with people who are really inquiring about mainly vulnerable people and how we can do a more holistic approach, a package around them to give them a more sustainable future. Interesting, I think we heard that there's some Italian people here. Yeah, we've had interest from Sardinia. I know that's, sorry, I know it's not Italy, but just to show you that there is a sort of European interest in what we're doing at the moment. And finally, we've just opened an office for the first time in Northern Ireland, which is really interesting for starting to get that community conflict and mediation process to get people starting to talk. So if you, the long and the short of it is I can talk for ages. I'm not going to talk for ages because the bar's been set up. But the main thing is, all I'd say is we can come back and we can actually show it in practice, and we can actually show you how you could almost journey map your client through a process using wheel assessments, how they feel each day, do they feel good, do they feel bad, and we can actually show you how you can securely share information with statutory and non-statutory organisations, and the system does the work for you. I'll tell you, it will blow your mind, it really will, and you'll be surprised that we're not using this already, you know, certainly in your organisations. So that's it. I just wanted to give a quick input in relation to that. I hope that was helpful, and I'm sure you'll get your information through Heather. Thank you very much.
Okay, well, we've come to the end of the presentations, the end of the learning piece. Thank you very much to everyone that presented and shared their learning and their outcomes with you. Special thanks to Laura and Alice. Thank you very much for talking us through your project. To John Clearly and for Renacy for hosting this activity in their wonderful space. It's absolutely fantastic. Thank you very much to Hannah for your insights around what you're doing with single parent families and some of the work you're doing and some of the work you won't be doing, but doing in a very different way in the future, which is really interesting. And thank you very much also to John for sharing the reflections and some of the journey that they've gone through as an organisation, combining all those organisations and all that delivery together. So I think a really, really good focus on learning over the last hour or so. Can I ask you to give a round of applause for all our speakers, please? Also a massive thanks to those people that have helped out today in Renacy. So thank you very much. Please get some refreshments, some sandwiches, some drinks, and please use the time really well to network together, talk to each other, share your experiences. Thank you very much.